Good morning. Welcome to the February 19th California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via WebEx. I'll announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. I'd like to note that we'll be holding the board's strategic planning session today after the hearing, closed session, and lunch. So we're expecting the strategic planning session to begin around 12:30. Moderator, would you please provide the audience with instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Absolutely. At the time public comment is called for, we're going to show a visual on the screen, and we're going to ask everyone to raise a hand. You'll be able to do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise their hand. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. As stated before, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second verbal warning before your time expires. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now to item 1, call to order and establishment of quorum. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. Christina, please call the roll.
Good morning. Rebecca Thies,
Present, public member, she, her.
Nor Uribe,
Present, LCSW member.
Justin Huff,
Present LMFT he him.
Anna Singi,
Present public member.
Wendy Strack,
Present public member.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Present LPCC member.
John Sovek,
Present LMFT, pronouns he, him.
Susan Friedman,
Present, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Present. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm a public board member, and my pronouns are she, her.
Lorez Bailey,
A present, public member.
Christopher Jones is absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Christina. Again, we'll be taking a lunch break as close to 11:30 as possible. It'll depend on where we are with the hearings. Item 2 is suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda item suggestions from board members? Okay. Are there any in-house audience participants that would like to suggest future agenda items? Seeing none. Moderator, do
I'm
we
sorry,
have anyone
Madam Chair.
online that would like to suggest future agenda items?
Madam Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed the moment here
Oh,
for
okay.
suggestions for future agenda items. I'm not sure if this is the time, but a further discussion on AI.
Okay,
Thank you.
note that. Okay, back to moderator. Are there any online audience participants that would like to suggest future agenda items?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise your hand for agenda item 2. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 3, public comments for items not on the agenda. I will now open public comment for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commenter will have 2 minutes. Do we have any board members with comments for items not on the agenda? Okay. Are there any comments from our in-house audience? Seeing none. Moderator, do we have any comments from our online audience?
WebEx, Now is the time to raise your hand to make a public comment. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment longer now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. At this time, we'll begin our petition hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Judge Matt Block. Good morning, Judge Block, and the meeting is yours.
All right, good morning. Thank you. Ms. Cooper, if you want to come forward, please. Seat there. Ready, Ms. Till? All right. We're on record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Jacqueline Susan Cooper. This is BBS case number 2002-022-002-445. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2026-010-773. May I have our court reporter please state her name and CSR number for the record?
CSR 10381.
Thank you. May I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Code Section 11522.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. We have already established before going on record in this matter that a quorum of the board is present. Nonetheless, I would ask the members of the board to identify themselves when their name is called just for our administrative record. Ms. Thies?
Present.
Ms. Uribe?
Present.
Mr. Huft?
Present.
Rana Singhi?
Present.
Mrs. Strack?
Present.
Dr. Boyd?
Present.
Mr. Sovek? Ms. Friedman?
Present.
Walker?
Present.
And Ms. Bailey?
Present.
Thank you for that. All right. Ms. Cooper, Ms. Crawford and I had an opportunity to speak with you before we went on record to explain the procedure that will follow this morning. Ms. Crawford will begin by presenting your petition, giving an overview of your case. You will then have the opportunity to make a presentation under oath. At the conclusion of that, the board members may have some questions. Ms. Crawford may have some questions. I may have some questions as well. When we're concluded with that, the board will go into closed session for deliberations. You won't get an answer on your petition today, but we'll be notified of that in the future. Do you have any questions for me before we begin?
I don't think so. I think everything was explained really clearly to me.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
If at any point during the procedure or proceedings you have any questions, let me know. I can't give you legal advice, but I might be able to help explain why we're saying or doing certain things, okay?
I will do.
All right, so with that, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Your Honor. The petitioner was issued her associate marriage and family therapist registration in 2021. In 2023, an accusation was filed alleging that petitioner was convicted of drunk driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.23%. In April of 2022, petitioner had drank 5 glasses of wine with a friend and was driving home when her car experienced a malfunction. She pulled over and police reported to the scene. They found her visibly under the influence of alcohol and unable to stand without assistance. She was arrested and thereafter convicted, placed on formal probation for 3 years, and ordered to take a 3-month DUI class. After a hearing on the accusation that had been filed, petitioner's registration was placed on probation for 5 years, effective September 28, 2023, with a projected completion date of September 27th of 2028. Petitioner's probation status and terms extended to her licensed marriage and family therapist license when it was issued in October 11th, 2024. 2 years and 7 months remain on petitioner's probation period. She is compliant in all aspects of her probation, which included psychotherapy, drug and alcohol testing, and a dependency support program. Because the burden is on petitioner, I have no further statement, but would reserve the right to question. Your Honor, I can go through our exhibits at this time.
Please.
Exhibit 1 contains the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. I would like to mark and introduce that into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Cooper?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification for the petitioner. I'd like to mark and introduce that into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 contains the underlying disciplinary documents in this case, which includes an adopted proposed decision and the accusation. We'd like to mark and introduce this at this time.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 contains the case summary by probation analyst Amanda Cantrell. Would like to mark and introduce this into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 contains the petitioner's petition for early termination of probation. I'd like to mark and introduce this into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Exhibit 6 contains the attachments in support of the petition that was provided by the petitioner, and we'd like to mark and introduce Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 6 is admitted.
And Exhibit 7 contains a release of information and a psychotherapy information sheet. I'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 7.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 7 is admitted.
At this time, Your Honor, I have no other evidence to present.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. All right, Ms. Cooper, do you wish to make a statement under oath?
I do.
All right. Would you
Yes.
please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Because you're representing yourself, Ms. Cooper, I'm going to let you testify freely just in the narrative. As I said, when you're done, let me know. Ms. Crawford may have some questions, board may have some questions, I may have a question or two as well. But with that, I am going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I wasn't exactly prepared to give a statement, but I am going to paraphrase from Addendum 1 and describe my efforts and successes in my own rehabilitation. I would like to thank Judge Block, and I'd like to thank all members of the BBS board for hearing my petition this morning. If I move my head around, that's because I'm trying to acknowledge all of you during this. As Ms. Crawford said, I was arrested for a DUI on April the 5th of 2022. I had been drinking. My drinking was intimately connected to the death of my father earlier that year. It was a very complicated relationship. I have done a lot of therapy around that relationship. Prior to that event, I've been in recovery for 4 years. I knew exactly what to do following the DUI. The next day, I went back to AA, and I've been in recovery ever since that time. I immediately told all of my employers. At the time, I was employed at Alhambra Valley Retreat, which is a men's residential alcohol and drug rehabilitation facility. I am still employed there. I am proud of the work that I do, and I'm really proud of the successes that we have seen there as well.
Ms. Cooper, could you scoot up a little bit to the
Okay.
microphone?
Oh,
Just to
sorry
make
about
sure we have a clear record.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Anyway, also at that point, actually, I have a timeline here. Do you mind if I pull something out of my bag just so that I can read the timeline? Okay, that's going to make it a little bit easier. So in 2023, I think I can just read through it. Yes.
Like that, so they can follow.
Okay, very good. So I have 15 copies of this. Okay, thank you. And really, it's just the first page. There are other pieces of evidence there that are duplicates that you have already seen, but it's the timeline that's most important because it's not in the evidence. In 2023, I had 9 months of continuous sobriety. There is a certificate in there from the AA meeting that I attended all the time at that point. Things have changed a little bit, but I'll get to that because it's a really important part of my ongoing recovery. I think in January 24th, I was convicted of the DUI in the state of California. And on April the 6th, I had 1 year of continuous sobriety. On May 21st, I had 13 months of continuous sobriety, and there is a letter from my then AA sponsor. She is no longer my AA sponsor because her husband passed and she moved away. At that time as well, I started going to Recovery Dharma. We went with the gentleman at work. So we went to Recovery Dharma meetings in Oakland. And the parts of my spirituality that felt disconnected in AA felt connected in the Buddhist setting of Recovery Dharma. Ever since that time, I have routinely attended 2 Recovery Dharma meetings a week. I now run a Recovery Dharma meeting at Kaiser IOP in Walnut Creek on a Thursday. And my Dharma buddy is running it today. They are aware, Kaiser Addiction Medicine is aware that I am on probation. I had a long conversation with them before accepting the volunteer position running Recovery Dharma at Kaiser IOP. On September the 28th, BBS probation started in 2023. Prior to that, I had a lengthy conversation with Amanda Cantrell, who is my probation officer during the orientation. I was very nervous. I did not know that I could do this. I knew that I could stay in recovery because I had done that and I was supported in that. But I did not know what this journey would look like. Superficially, I knew it would be expensive. Superficially, I knew that I would have to maintain at least a second half job in order to pay for everything. Superficially, I knew that it would be invasive because I would have to be tested. Those things I knew. What I didn't know was the benefits that I would get from being held accountable in this way and from the growth that I would get throughout this process. I am a very different woman than the very scared woman who was anxious and afraid of embarking on this journey all the way back in 2023. But Amanda, both gently and firmly, guided me through this, and I'm really, really grateful for that. In 2024, and I completed all of the required CEUs immediately. I wanted, and I have done all the way through, to have small achievable goals along this journey so that I could understand that I was making progress and that there was momentum throughout this journey. I didn't want to get stuck. In April of 2024, I had 2 years of continuous sobriety. I still go to some AA meetings, but I always go to Dharma. I go on Monday evenings at the Pleasant Hill Fellowship. Sometimes I do Zoom on Wednesday. I do Recovery Dharma at Kaiser IOP on a Thursday. I go to the Island Fellowship AA meeting fairly regularly on Saturday mornings. Sometimes I slip in the Vallejo meetings because I live in that community, and I was held by that community at the beginning of this journey, and I am appreciative of that. Where I work, we have an affiliate relationship with a recovery organization called Support for Recovery in Contra Costa County. And I go to a lot of their events. They have Thanksgiving, they have Easter, they have community events. And so I'm engaged in their community events. On September the 12th of 2024, my petition for early termination with the state of California was granted, and the conviction was expunged under the clean slate law. I understand that that doesn't seal the record of the arrest. I am aware of all of those things. But again, this was a small, achievable goal for me. It was important that I was accountable in a court of law as well. By this time, I had completed all DUI classes. I went through BIBET in Vallejo. I had completed all the CEUs, and I paid for everything. In 2025, April the 6th, I had 3 years of continuous sobriety. Somewhere in the middle of this, because what I recognize in recovery is my life gets better. It is infinitely better. It is organized. I have clarity. I do my job better. I am a better clinician for this journey. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, I bought a house, which seems somewhat inconceivable to me, honestly. Bought a little house in Vallejo, and I settled as well. This has been a journey of consistency. This has been a journey of patience. This has been a journey of settling into myself. Another important component of this is when I received the determination from the BBS, I was informed that I had to change therapist. I was a little upset about this because I had had a 3-year relationship with my prior therapist. At the time, as I say, I was a little upset. Now I completely understand why. Because the circumstances that led up to the night of April the 4th, when I drank, were about trauma that had not been adequately, not resolved, but reshaped. And I needed a new therapist. I also needed somebody that I could be completely honest with about my drinking. I don't think I'd really addressed that with my prior therapist. When I first started therapy with my new therapist, Tony Holt, I assumed we just sort of sit around and I'd be like, I'm not drinking, I'm irritated by this, and I'm in recovery. That is not at all how it went. We have dived deep into my past. We have dived deep into the trauma that precipitated the event. We have talked about all sorts of things. She has been wise. She has been gentle. And I've grown because of that relationship as well. At the end of 2025, the Board of Behavioral Sciences reduced the amount of testing per month to 3 times per month, and a reduction in individual therapy to twice a month. Every now and again, if you look at the records of therapy, I've added an additional therapy appointment when there have been challenges going on in my life that I knew should be held by therapy. This has not been about whether I was triggered to drink. These have been relationship challenges. Sometimes these have been financial challenges. And sometimes these have been post-traumatic stress disorder, kind of blips of past trauma. But I understand where to go. I understand who to talk to in these circumstances. I'd like to slightly, just minimally address the testing process. As I'm sure all of you are aware, halfway through my probation, you changed testing companies because I think there was a lapse in testing. All of that's fine. I mean, I signed on for this. I understand that I need it to be tested. Thus far, I've been saliva tested multiple times. I've been urine tested because there was an insufficient sample once with the saliva testing. I was blood tested because there had been a gap in testing between one company and the other. And I've also been hair follicle tested because there was a false positive once. So I immediately contacted Amanda. I went for a hair follicle test that goes back 3 months. All of my tests have been negative because I am negative. So every single bodily fluid has been tested and I am negative. As I said, the testing is mostly minimally invasive, but every now and again, it has been rather invasive. The urine test and the blood test were rather invasive. And those were moments when I am extremely grateful for my therapist in being able to hold on to this because I needed somebody to talk to. I guess a question might be, and I apologize for the rather lengthy narrative. I guess a question might be, who in my immediate circle of support knows about all of this? So my community in AA, my community in Recovery Dharma knows about this. Not the casual members, but the inner circle in Dharma, in the Sangha, knows about all of this. My boss at Alhambra Valley Retreat knows about this. My clinical supervisor prior to me being licensed at Oak Creek Counseling Center knows about this. Obviously, my therapist knows about this. My life partner knows about this. My best friend, who is also my Dharma buddy, we go to Dharma together, and we are going to go to a retreat next year, knows about this. 3 other individuals in my intimate friend circle know about this. I haven't publicized it widely. None of the clients where I work know about this. It is not important that they know my personal story as shared experience for me to be able to treat them. I understand that when I got in that car in April of 2022 and I was drunk, it was a conscious act of disregard for human life. And I carry that with me every single day. Some days it's heavier, some days it's lighter. Obviously, I work with men who also have DUIs. I have managed the counter-transference around that, and I do a good job around that. And also, I am firm in moving them towards an understanding of what conscious disregard for human life can look like. In my spiritual practice, I have the utmost regard for human life. That has been a major shift in the way that I look at the world. And I am grateful that I went through this journey. Thank you so much for hearing me this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Ms. Crawford, questions for Ms. Cooper?
Thank you. You mentioned in your timeline that in 2022, after your arrest, you returned to AA meetings and recovery. So what did your relationship with alcohol look like prior to the DUI for which the accusation was filed? Sure. I've been in recovery for approximately 4 years. I knew I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. There was no major event that prompted me walking into recovery in the years prior to that. But what happened is I am not by nature a depressed person, but I noticed that I was depressed. And so I looked at what I was doing and I understood I was drinking excessively, and that was connected to my depression. When I started back then going to AA meetings, I also noticed how my depression was lifting. So there was no major event that prompted the initial entrance into recovery, but there was a sense that I was not myself. And so that's what happened. And how long prior to entering, well, let me clarify. So 4 years, for 4 years prior to the arrest, you had been sober? Approximately 4 years. I don't exactly remember, but yes, definitely for 4 and some change. Yeah. Okay. And you had acknowledged to yourself that you did have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol? Yes, yes, I did. How long do you think that you had that unhealthy relationship? That's a really good question. Probably for about 10 years before that. It's really hard to examine that. I have been in graduate school at UCLA for fine art and art criticism 20 years ago. And, you know, while it sounds kind of rote, there was a culture of drinking in graduate school, particularly for creative practices. And I would say that I definitely drank. Perhaps it was excessively, but I didn't examine it because it wasn't impacting my idea of who I was. And as I said, I am not a depressed person. Throughout this journey of probation, while I've been overwhelmed by it sometimes, while I have been triggered, particularly by the different types of testing, I have not been depressed about it. And so when I noticed I was depressed, I looked at the variables that were impacting my life, and the unhealthy relationship with alcohol was the single variable that I could identify that I needed to change. And I had friends who were in AA, so I knew where to go at that time. And do you think that that relationship with alcohol that you had for those 10 years, was that part of the difficult relationship you had with your father, or was that prompted by something else? I think that there has always been an undercurrent of the challenging relationship that I had with my father. There has always been an undercurrent of that trauma and that abuse. But at the time, I knew a lot less about alcohol. I knew a lot less about alcohol dependency and recovery. So honestly, I don't think I really thought about it. So in retrospect, in hindsight, yes. In the moment, no. You took the step of identifying that you were depressed and
eliminating alcohol to address
Yes.
that. And it is a commendable step to take.
Thank you.
What wasn't happening in your mind when you put that effort aside and drank after 4 years?
Okay. My father died in January of 2022. I was living in the United States. He was living in Great Britain. I had not been back to see him for probably 2.5, 3 years. It was COVID, so I didn't travel as well. I'm also a green card, and I think at the time I was waiting for the renewal on my green card, which has now been renewed. So there were mitigating factors why I did not travel back. He'd been sick for a long time. He had Parkinson's and early onset dementia. It was a very complicated relationship, full of trauma, full of abuse. Like many folks who have experienced that in early childhood, I loved him deeply as well. And so when he passed and I got the call from my sister, with whom I have a friendly but not close relationship, I knew that there would be a significant impact. What I didn't really know at the time is that my therapist at the time, who was an AMFT, who I really enjoyed, but she didn't have the skill to hold that with me. I attempted to get a therapist through Kaiser and was not really assigned a therapist through Kaiser, but I didn't really know how to advocate appropriately for it. But I could feel the flood of everything. It was a tsunami of emotions that I was some days able to contain, some days not able to contain at all. And the 4th of April was also my birthday. It was a collision of events that rendered me in the moment incapable of doing the right thing. And the right thing would have been to have called somebody in AA. The right thing would just have been to have called a different type of friend. And I did the wrong thing. And I understand emotionally why it happened. I have come to understand both in an intellectual and a rational way why it happened. I've come to understand that in therapy. And I've also come to understand how I can manage those emotions and those feelings moving forward, because sometimes there is, a little, I don't know, feeling that comes up. There's a lot of feelings that still come up around that death, around that relationship. But I can accept them, I can let them go, and I can soften the edges of the impact. And I didn't know how to do it then.
So other than who you are today,
Yeah.
which you've said is a very different person, are there other elements in your life that, should you be in that flood of emotion again, that there are elements now in your life that you can turn to if you don't feel you can handle it yourself?
Absolutely. I have my therapist, as I say, when challenges have occurred over the last couple of years, I have done additional therapy sessions. She is open to that. That is part of our understanding. We meet regularly. I have the folks in my Sangha with Dharma, who I talk to a lot, who I have telephone numbers for, who I see on a Monday, who I see on a Thursday. My best friend is my Dharma buddy. And so we talk all the time. We talk once every couple of days. And she knows about this process. She is aware of this process. I have friends in AA. My supervisor at work is aware of this. And I work in residential rehab as well. So while again, I never describe this to the clients, I have colleagues in residential rehab that don't know about this process, but because we are all in recovery, we can freely talk about triggers and emotions and managing things and recovery programs that way. So I have multiple people in my life who are supportive of my recovery, who are supportive and appreciative of the woman that I have become. I have friends, and also I can be a friend, and that too is different. I am a genuine and authentic friend to other people.
You said that you were not in a place to make the right decisions when you were feeling that flood. And you explained what the right decisions would have been. And you said, however, you called the wrong friend.
I called the wrong friend.
What does that mean?
I called somebody who would sit and have a drink and listen and watch me cry. I mean, in some ways, they were a friend. In other ways, they were not a friend because we drank together. They were the wrong friend.
And do you still have a relationship with that friend?
I still have a relationship with that friend, and they know the outcome of what happened that night. It has taken us 2 years to really sit with each other and talk about this. And that was really important as well, that I could have that very difficult conversation, because it wasn't their fault that the DUI happened. It was my fault. I own that. I took the drink. They didn't get in a car. They sat and listened to me. It was not their fault.
Do you put any responsibility, not responsibility, but do you put any onus on that friend to have been a more healthy friend for you in that moment?
In that moment, I don't, it is not their responsibility to be healthier for me. It is my responsibility to be healthier for me. Now, do I think they should have taken the keys to the car? Yes. But do I think I should have given them the keys to the car? Absolutely, yes. So I think that hindsight is useful, but it is not my job to be judgmental about their role in any of this. Yes.
Is that friend someone that you have in your close support system?
That friend is somebody that is in the periphery of my support system, but it took 2 years to have the full conversation. They are also now in recovery as well, so that is good. But I don't tell anybody else that they should get into recovery. Again, that's not really my role either. I work with men who are in treatment, so professionally it becomes my role, but on a friendship level, it is not my role either. So
I wanted to switch to some of your supporting documentation.
yes,
You did go through quite a bit of information. Can you also go through the individuals that wrote letters for you, who they are, why they wrote those letters, and then also the classes that you took and why you took those classes.
Absolutely. So the first one I'd like to address is my friend Carrie. She knew on the night of the DUI that I had a DUI. I called her from jail, and she goes to Dharma with me. We have known each other from AA meetings. We have known each other for a long time. Her husband is in recovery. We are very close. We will go on a Dharma retreat next year. And we talk both as people in recovery, and we talk as people who are friends too. The other person, there's one other person, there is my Dharma informal mentor, Robert Anka. There are no sponsors in Dharma. There are mentors within the Sangha system. Robert started the Recovery Dharma meeting in Pleasant Hill. I've been in that meeting probably since week 2 of it starting. And there are no real leaders in Dharma, but maybe he's the de facto leader. And so when Kaiser reached out to Dharma East Bay and asked if there was somebody who wanted to take on a role as a recovery Dharma facilitator, a volunteer role, he announced it in the Sangha, and I went up to him and I said, I'd really like to do that. This is an important part of my recovery. I would really like to do that. And so then one of the other letters is from Ren Green, who is the Kaiser Addiction Medicine clinical person. Maybe she's a director, I'm not sure, at Kaiser Addiction Medicine in Walnut Creek. And so she wrote a letter stating that I've been going and facilitating this now for over a year. Again, it's a big part of my recovery. I get to see folks who are 4 days clean and sober, and they have come straight out of detox. And I get to see folks who are 80 days clean and sober and are going through the Kaiser IOP program. Another letter is from the clinical director of Alhambra Valley Retreat, Dave Cavolt, and he has been my boss since before the DUI. And he knew of obviously he knew of the DUI. I was on suspension for about 2 weeks. I had to be cleared through an independent assessment to go back to work, cleared that I was psychologically stable to go back to work. He has been a big supporter of mine. I am held in accountability all the time at rehab. I could be tested at any moment at rehab if there was any indication of impairment. And in fact, when there was the false positive for cannabis in a saliva test, I went straight in to work because I was going to work, and I was tested at work. I mean, it didn't count for the BBS, but it was definitely a negative urine sample. So I can be tested at any time at work. And I believe one of the other letters is from Peggy Baroni, who is the HR director at Alhambra Valley Retreat. And she has been responsible also. She understands what this has been about, what this is about, and she does my performance reviews and obviously monitors my performance at Alhambra Valley Retreat. And I think that's it for the letters of recommendation. And I'm sorry, I sort of forgot the other part of the question.
The other part was, what were the reasons you took some of your continuing education courses?
Oh, okay. Again, that's a really great question. So during this, I also became KDAC 1 and KDAC 2, which is a certified alcohol and drug counselor. in the state of California. And so I took additional classes. Those were not required by the BBS, but I work in rehab, and I also didn't necessarily feel that I got enough classes at the end of my counseling psychology degree. I also sort of informally supervise a bunch of residential counselors at Alhambra Valley Retreat, and they are all taking at least KDAC 1. So I kind of figured I should be doing the coursework that they're doing so that I can understand what their challenges with the coursework is. So that was in addition to the CEUs that I took. The CEUs were part of my commitment and part of the requirements for probation. I took CEUs on the impact of alcohol, I believe, in the family, the impact of alcohol on, I think, work performance. I don't have them in front of me. I also took a very lengthy CEU on all manner of drugs, including alcohol. I include alcohol in the bucket of drugs. I think it's ridiculous to separate it out. So I learned a lot. I learned about both the physical impact and the social impact of addiction and of substance use disorder. So I took as many CEUs that I could find to fulfill the requirements, and then I kept taking them. I am required to do some of them for work, so I included those, but I took additional ones as well, in part because I work in residential rehab and I work with a broad spectrum of substances that, I work with men who are using a broad spectrum of substances. And I think it's important to be informed about those. And also, this is part of my journey. This is part of who I am, somebody who has substance use disorder. And it is important for me to educate and understand myself. And I learned a lot.
How long have you been working at your current employer?
Just over 3 years. Well, actually, no, nearly 4 years, a lot over 3 years. So I started in, I think, the end of May in 2022. I was suspended for 2 weeks following the DUI. And so I really kind of count the start date as around April the 15th, because I sort of count it as a restart. So on April the 15th of this year, I will have worked there for 4 years. I have also a very small private practice that I was really gifted. I did my hours for my associate's degree at Oak Creek Relational Counseling Center in Pleasant Hill. And when I got my license, when I passed the licensing exam, they offered to rent me a room there so that I could stay there. And I have about 8 to 10 private practice clients that I see through my own practice. It's been really nice for me to have an office where I did my associate's hours, because it remains social. It's not as isolated as sometimes I think private practice might feel.
Those private patients, do you see them for alcohol and drug-related issues?
Not everybody. About half are now substance use disorder clients. That's kind of grown a little bit over the last year. But my specific focus in private practice is not necessarily substance use disorder. It is adults. it's adults with all sorts of challenges in their life because of the way that private practice lands. I think you end up seeing the clients that you should see. And so I now see 50% of substance use disorder clients, and I see predominantly seniors at this moment in time.
Do you have a mentor type individual that helps you with your private practice or is a support for your private practice?
The prior clinical director at Oak Creek Relational Counseling Center, Steve Polin, I can always contact if I need consultation. I have a close associate who is also in private practice that I can use for consultation. She is a licensed LMFT. And also the clinical director at Alhambra Valley Retreat is available for consultation when I need it with specific clients in private practice. And of course, because I do see substance use disorder clients in private practice, that consultation with the clinical director at Alhambra Valley Retreat is really important because we all understand the impact and the mechanics of substance use disorder.
You have about 2.5 years left to your probation, so you're halfway through. Why do you feel that you're ready now for termination?
First, I think the answer to that is twofold. Not obviously, but I have completed all of the requirements thus far for probation. Every drug test has been negative. I have completed all the CEUs. I am in individual therapy on a bi-weekly basis. I go to recovery support meetings. I am invested in recovery support meetings. And I am a very changed woman. I am patient. I am consistent. I am accountable. I am there for the people in my life, and I am there for me in my life. The other part is, if I am granted early termination of probation, very little changes in my life. I wanted to be clear about that. In essence, the only thing that changes in my life is the daily requirement to check in with Recovery Trek and to see if I'm being called to test, which I think in the over 2.5 years that I've been doing this, I've missed checking in twice, panicked, called Amanda, and been okay. So for over 800 check-ins, I've missed 2 of them. But that bit is a practical inconvenience, right? I hesitate to call it a burden because I committed to this, but it's definitely an inconvenience. So the testing is the only part that changes. Nothing else will change for me. I'll still go to Dharma. I'll still keep running Recovery Dharma at Kaiser IOP. I'll still drop in to AA meetings because I'm friendly with the folks there and it's part of my community. I'll still keep working at Alhambra Valley Retreat in residential rehab, and I'll still maintain my private practice, and I will remain in recovery. So I'm at a point where things change if I am granted early termination, and also nothing changes. And I don't want that to change. So
And you plan to also continue with your therapist?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've already discussed that with her. I plan to continue with Tawny, and my regularly set appointment with her is tomorrow morning at 8:15. So, yes, I plan to continue with my current therapist.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. We will now open it up to questions from the board, starting with Ms. Thies.
Hello, thank you for being here today and wanted to commend you on your continuous sobriety. I have a few questions about your employment right now. The first one is, do you desire to grow your private practice?
Not exactly. It grew a bit almost accidentally. When I because my internship was in women's residential, community mental health. I have always really enjoyed working as part of a team. And so it was not my intention to go into private practice. I sort of fell into private practice because I had clients who needed to continue to work with somebody who I really enjoy working with, and because I was offered a space in a community mental health clinic. So it's both private, but it's not isolated. So if my private practice kind of bumps along at between 8 and 10 clients a week, I am happy to leave it at that level and remain working as part of a team in a residential facility. I like that I can use different modalities in private practice that aren't explored in residential rehab, because it allows me to expand the way I think about treatment of all sorts of mental health challenges. But it is not my primary focus, and it never really has been.
Thank you. My second question is about your employment with Alhambra Valley Retreat. It seems like you started there around the time of your DUI.
Yes.
Where were you employed beforehand? And then additionally, I'm having a little bit of trouble following your time with the Delta Family Therapy Group.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind shedding some light on that.
Yeah, not at all. So I was employed as an AMFT, getting my hours towards licensure at Delta Family Therapy Group. I got the DUI. I informed my supervisor there. I remained working there, I think, for about 6 months. Then I was terminated. I understand now why I was terminated. In the moment, I didn't exactly understand, but I was now I understand, because she started paneling therapists for insurance. And I am not eligible to be paneled because I'm on probation. But I didn't understand it at the time, and it wasn't explained to me at the time. And through my own research, and because I keep up on this stuff, I now understand why I was terminated. Once I was terminated from Delta Family Therapy Group, my clinical supervisor at Alhambra Valley Retreat had been an AMFT at Oak Creek Relational Counseling Center, where they don't panel therapists. And so he reached out to Steve Pollan, who is the clinical director there. I interviewed with Steve, and so I moved from Delta to Oak Creek Relational Counseling Center, where I am not paneled on any insurance panel and where I only see private pay clients.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Uribe?
Yeah, good morning. I had a question. Do you think there was a correlation with your work and your relapse?
No. I think is a correlation between, at the time, I didn't know how to manage 2 jobs. So there's a correlation with the volume of work back then, but there is not a correlation between being triggered by folks who have substance use disorder. So yes, there was too much work, although I didn't know how to pace it, which I do know how to do now. But there was no correlation between substance use disorder in the population I was working with and my relapse.
Okay, do you have any plans, I guess, in maybe the recent future to change your work or do anything? I'm just curious if, like, say, once you get off probation.
I might. That's a really good question. Firstly, no, I'm not going to pivot into private practice entirely. That was never my goal. I have always worked in residential care. I worked initially in a psychiatric unit for about 2.5 years. My internship was in residential care. I like that environment. Alhambra Valley Retreat is a very small residential care facility, and I can see in the future I might, but I don't know, actually. I really like it there, and I think we do really good work, and I'm supported and I'm held there in recovery.
So I guess with that, if you ended up getting a significant amount of work, do you have a plan what you would do to help so that you don't get, I think last time you said it was kind of almost triggered having overwhelming work, so.
I've learned how to pace the work. One of the things that has changed is the amount of driving, oddly enough. Because Delta Family Therapy was located in Brentwood, which is quite a long drive from where I live. Oak Creek Relational Counseling is about 5 minutes away from Alhambra Valley Retreat, and it's only about 20 minutes away from where I live. Because I work in residential care, there is a way of pacing the work, and I'm also salaried, so I can make my hours to add up to the amount of required hours. So I can pace the work there, and I can choose how many folks I see in private practice. As an associate at Delta Family Therapy, I didn't have the choice of how many folks I saw per week. So I have been able to both change the number of hours of work and the pacing around the work. And I've learned a lot in Dharma about relaxing around things and breathing through things and understanding that it is not my responsibility for other people's recovery, that they have to do the work and I cannot work more than somebody else. So I've learned a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Huff?
Thank you for being here. You've talked a bit about different coping skills that you've gained over the last few years. Can you maybe in more detail identify what specific coping skills you have learned and how you're negotiating which types of coping skills to be using in different times?
Yeah. I do a lot of meditation. That's been a really big change. I didn't think I could do any meditation once when I started, and now I can do up to about 8 minutes, which for me is a lot. I have a meditation app that sometimes I put on in the car. I had on before I came here, so that was really helpful too. I've learned a lot of deep breathing techniques as well. I am able to recognize thoughts and not act on them as well. One of my, I mean, it sounds a little ridiculous, but I know that it isn't, that I make sure that I eat correctly. I'm not always a saint or a Buddhist around it, but I am mindful of what I put into my body as well as what I put into my mind. I surround myself with people who support me. I have dogs, so I walk them a lot. I find the moments of joy in my life, instead of trying to confirm the moments of suffering. And that has been a really big shift for me, is the way that I think about my life. I like to learn, so I do a lot of reading. I'm also an artist, so I paint. And that's one of the very few parts of my life, apart from meditation, where I'm able to get into a flow state. My brain and my physical coordination are working seamlessly without me directing it. And I still do art shows with friends of mine because that's a part of my joyful community as well. So I do lots of things now that I wasn't doing. And most importantly, I do things that bring me joy.
Great. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Angasini,
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Strack?
Thanks for being here and sharing with us today. It seems like Recovery Dharma has been a big part of your journey. Can you try to give us a brief understanding of what that really brings to you?
Yes. I didn't expect Recovery Dharma to really change how I thought about being in recovery. So I was going to AA meetings. I'd been to AA meetings beforehand. I like AA. And AA meetings in Vallejo are filled with characters. And so I liked that component. I really enjoyed my sponsor. We had a good connection. As I say, she moved away when her husband died and she went to live with family. And I wasn't really looking for another AA sponsor. I go to AA meetings with work. And one day we got a gentleman into treatment, and I don't do AA meetings, but I do Dharma. And because we like to provide folks with the things that they ask for that are supportive for their treatment, we went to a Dharma meeting in Oakland. And after the first meeting, which was held in a cold church in Oakland, something changed because there's an acknowledgement of suffering. There's something called the Four Noble Truths in Dharma that goes, in this world, there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering. There can be an end to suffering. The way to the end of suffering is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is a skill set, like the 12 steps, sort of analogous to the 12 steps, but broader. So while I am an alcoholic, I am many, many things as well. Not all of them perfect, and many of them not perfect. And I also needed to look at those. And so the broader overview in Dharma was appealing to me. I knew nothing about Buddhism at all. But I appreciate that it's a teaching, and I like to learn. and that it is not a focus on a named God or higher power. It is a focus on teachings and a life path, because this is a life path for me in all of my deficits, right? Not just alcoholism, but I can be a little quick to be judgmental every now and again, and that could use some adjustment for sure. And it provided me with a way to really look at myself and be supported in doing all of that. I also really like the book Recovery Dharma because it was updated in 2023. And so there are stories in the back of the book that really resonate with me because they're contemporary as well. So I liked both the ancient aspects and vision of Dharma, the teaching, and the contemporaneous narratives that it gets applied to. I really like it.
Great. Thank you. That's my only question.
All right. Dr. Boyd?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sovic?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Friedman?
Morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. You seem to be a very confident person, and I'm just curious, if you were to end probation, is there any way at all that you would be tempted to maybe just try a drink someday?
That's the obvious question. And no, I have thought about it, actually. I mean, I've thought about the question, not about the drink. So I will have 4 years of continuous sobriety again in April the 6th. I love my life now. I am confident, I'm upbeat. I still get sad. My cat had to be euthanized about 2 months ago, and I was not confident and upbeat in that moment. I was sad and distraught and really anxious, but I was able to move forward with that. I love my life. I treasure going to Dharma and the folks in my Sangha and our relationship. I enjoy being a friend for my friends. I love my joy. I work around men in treatment who, when they come in, their joy has been stolen by their drug of choice. And I will not allow my joy to be stolen that way.
Thank you.
Dr. Walker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Cooper. I really value and appreciate your candid testimony and opening statement today. And I have no questions.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Bailey?
Ms. Cooper, thanks for being here today. Thanks for your extensive testimony, and I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Crawford, any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Cooper, is there anything else you would like the board to know about yourself and your journey?
Again, I thank you for hearing this appeal. I could not, even if it was plausible, which it wasn't, I could not have sat here and provided this testimony in the way that I provided it this morning, even a year ago. I am a different person. I am a better clinician. I can witness growth in myself. I can also witness growth in the relationships that I form with friends as well, that I have different types of friendships. I value different qualities in people. And I just feel very privileged to have been supported by, in a sense, the board's binding of me to the restrictions of probation, because what felt like a punishment was really only support. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Just as a procedural issue, you've provided the board with additional documentation this morning. I understand the board has already received it, but suffice to say you would like the board to consider these additional documents in rendering a decision.
Yeah, it's really just the first 3 pages, actually, because the rest of them are duplicates of what was in the original document on Case Connect.
So I will mark those for identification as additional documents provided by petitioner Exhibit A. Any objection to Exhibit A, Ms. Crawford? All right, Exhibit A is admitted and will be considered.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper, as I said, the board will now go into closed session for deliberations, and you'll be informed of their decision on a date in the future. Best of luck to you. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, board.
All right, with that, the matter is submitted, the record is closed, and we are off the record at 9:57. Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Great, thank you. The board will now move into closed session. Once we conclude our closed session, we'll be taking a lunch break and we'll resume our open session to conduct additional board business when we return. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be moving to item 6, strategic planning session for the board's 2026 to 2030 strategic plan. Today's strategic planning session gives us a valuable opportunity to step away from our day-to-day responsibilities and focus on the big picture where we are headed and how we want to position the board for the future. Encourage each of us to engage thoughtfully, openly, and collaboratively. This process works best when we bring forward diverse perspectives and have candid, forward-looking conversations. To help frame today's discussion, board management has developed a set of proposed objectives. Those were thoughtfully brainstormed in response to the weaknesses identifying in the environmental scan and are intended to move us meaningfully towards achieving our strategic goals. Today is our opportunity to refine, strengthen, and align them together. We're fortunate to have Sarah Irani and Tricia St. Clair from the Solid team here to guide us through the process and keep us focused and productive. Thank you for the time you've invested preparing for today and looking forward to a meaningful and productive session. So we'll turn it over to you guys.
Hi, hello. Let me get the PowerPoint up and we can go ahead and begin. All right, so welcome to the Board of Behavioral Sciences Strategic Planning session. My name is Sarah Irani. I'm a strategic business analyst and facilitator with Solid, and I also have my co-facilitator with me. Do you want to use the mic over there?
Tricia St. Clair, also a strategic business.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Tricia St. Clair, also a strategic business analyst and facilitator.
And our role today is to act as a neutral party and provide structure. We will be documenting some of the discussion today. Additionally, we'll be checking for understanding. The correct spelling and grammar later. We are doing a little bit of wordsmithing today, but we're going to try to minimize that as much as possible. But in terms of spelling and grammar, we can do that offline because we want to make sure that we're focusing all our time on developing those objectives. All right, just a couple things. We do ask that the participants please minimize any distractions, try to respect one another's contributions. We do ask that everyone try to participate and contribute. And lastly, reach a consensus. Sometimes discussion can go back and forth often with strategic planning. And so at a certain point, you may want to ask yourself, is this something that I can live with? And if so, then we can, continue and move on. All right, so a couple things that we're going to be doing today. We're going to review diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We'll review the strategic planning process. We'll kind of go over a little bit of the highlights of the environmental scan. And lastly, we're going to develop and refine those strategic objectives. So for diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. In 2022, Governor Newsom issued an executive order issuing that all state agencies have a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and now accessibility as well. And part of this is in the strategic planning, is called out for specifically the strategic planning process. Also in 2022, Department of Consumer Affairs established the DEIA Steering Committee to kind of help with that process and addressing this executive order. And DCA's DEIA mission statement is to create a California Department of Consumer Affairs for all. You probably know what diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility mean, but we are going to briefly go over the definitions real quick. Diversity is the inherent and acquired qualities, characteristics, and experiences that make us unique as individuals and the groups to which we belong. Equity is creating paths to equal outcomes by recognizing that some people and communities may have unequal starting points driven by different histories, historical treatment, circumstances, strengths, and needs. Inclusion is the practice to maintain a positive environment where all individuals feel recognized, understood, and valued. And lastly, accessibility. This is designing systems, environments, and experiences so that people of all abilities can access and engage with them. And this includes people with disabilities. One thing that people often get tripped on, they believe that equity and equality are the same thing. However, they are very different things. Equality is providing the same equal treatment to everyone, whereas equity is creating pathways to equal outcomes. And as you can kind of see in the little picture here, equality on the left-hand side shows that everyone's given the same platform, regardless of their needs. And this isn't helpful for the person on the right because they still can't see over the fence. However, on the right side, with equity, everyone's given a platform that meets their needs. And so all of them are able to see over the fence and look at the game. One thing that we want to kind of maintain while in strategic planning is unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is something that we all have. And so we have a little quick short video here that we're going to watch to kind of talk about how we can mitigate unconscious bias. So I'll go ahead and play that.
The unconscious mind is amazing. It can process vastly more information than our conscious mind by using shortcuts based on our background, cultural environment, and personal experiences to make almost instantaneous decisions about everything around us. The snag is, it's wrong quite a lot of the time, especially on matters that need rational thinking. Here's a classic example. A bat and a ball cost £1 10 pence. If the bat costs £1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? Most people, including over 50% of students at some of the world's leading universities, get the answer wrong and say 10 pence. The answer is actually 5 pence. Many of us choose 10 pence without thinking. This is because our unconscious mind uses instinct, not analysis. So our unconscious is fallible. It's also biased. It makes snap judgments of people we meet, categorizing them according to gender, social and other characteristics. In milliseconds, we judge whether somebody is like us and belongs to our in-group. These are the people we favor. So men might favour men, while women might favour women. However, we can belong to different in-groups, and we like to be part of an in-group that's powerful, which could mean a woman favouring a man over a woman. That's unconscious bias. All of us have it, and it colours our decisions without our realising. For example, research reveals that if I were a man, you would be more likely to be nodding in agreement right now, because people pay more attention to a male voice. The Royal Society fosters excellence in science, but this can only be achieved if we select from the widest range of talent. And that's not possible if unconscious bias is narrowing down the field for non-scientific reasons. To lessen the impact of unconscious bias, which is easier for us to notice in others, we are raising the awareness of unconscious bias to members of our selection and appointment panels. We're encouraging panel members to deliberately slow down decision-making, reconsider reasons for decisions, question cultural stereotypes, and monitor each other for unconscious bias. We can't cure unconscious bias, but with self-awareness, we can address it.
All right. So when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, there are some myths surrounding it. And so we want to take a moment to kind of dispel some of those myths, the common myths. The first one being that DIA is only about race and gender, and it excludes certain people, specifically white men. This is untrue. When it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, we all have more than like 20 characteristics that make us up. And to say that, you know, it's only about race and gender is just untrue. There's so many different characteristics that describe us as human beings. The second myth is that DIA is a zero-sum divisive game to create winners and losers. This is also incorrect. To think that in order to gain something, someone else must lose out is biased thinking. And DIA is a growth mindset set on growing people. The other third myth that we hear oftentimes in the environmental scan portion is that DIA means recruiting unqualified people. This is also untrue and is based on a what people believe that there's a trend, you know, trying to hire people for tokenized reasons. However, once again, this is just untrue. For this part, basically, I always forget this talking point. For this, basically, to think that there's only job requirements to fill a tokenized role is untrue. It makes it think that there isn't like a large enough net. And so DIA is kind of expanding that net to make sure that, you know, we are hiring qualified people and reaching out to areas that, you know, may have been overlooked before. There are also some many benefits to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And these are some statistics that we have. Deloitte has a stat saying that when employees believe that their organization is committed to diversity, they feel included and innovation increases by 83%. Teams that follow inclusive processes make decision 2 times faster and in half as many meetings. So if we're inclusive today, we'll be able to get strategic planning done faster today. And then lastly, companies with more diverse and inclusive teams have about a 22% turnover rate than those without. And this is from the Muse and Gallup. So as you can see, there are a lot of reasons to consider diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in strategic planning. And speaking of that, when it comes to strategic planning, a couple questions you may want to ask yourself as we're going over the objectives. What is the proposal? And here we might want to assess for diversity. Who benefits? Who's going to benefit from these objectives and the strategic plan? And here we may want to make sure that we are assessing for inclusion and including groups that may otherwise not have been included. Who is burdened is something that you want to think about, and here you may want to assess equity. And lastly, what different needs are there? And here we want to make sure that we are assessing for accessibility and that we're providing access to everyone. A couple other things, a couple specific examples that you may want to think about. One example is continuing education requirements, may not specifically for this board, but kind of other boards in general. Adding more continuing education requirements may be burdensome on licensees, either for geographical regions or financially. So that's an example of one common kind of objective that you may want to think about. All right. And with that, we'll take a little icebreaker and play a quick game. And I apologize, I would have been a little bit more prepared, but I don't have my timer. In your packet, you should have the second page should be a page with a bunch of numbers. And if you've played this game before, which I know some of you have because you did strategic planning with me last time, don't tell your neighbor what the game is. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your pen and you're not gonna mark the paper, you're just gonna tap it. You're gonna find the number 1 and you're gonna find the number 2, 3, and 4 and try to get to the highest number you can. Don't start yet. I'm only gonna give you 30 seconds. Okay? Is everyone ready? Yeah? Okay, and start. All right, and time. What was the highest number people got? 7? 9? 10? 12? Okay. 14? Okay. Now, what if I told you that there is a strategy to this game? I'm going to pass out a separate sheet. All right, I noticed some of you have already kind of started figuring it out, but when we put the grid on top of the numbers, you can tell the 1 is in the first box, 2 is in the second one, 3 is in the third, and you keep going all the way until 9. When you hit 10, you go back up at the top and follow that pattern. So this time I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And now that you have the strategy, let's see if we can get a higher number. So go ahead and start now. All right, and time. Did we get higher numbers? Yeah? What was the highest number? 54. I think that's the last one on there. Nice. All right. And how does this relate to strategic planning? Well, when you have a strategy, you're able to accomplish more. When you didn't have that grid in front of you, you were just kind of, blindly trying to find all the numbers, and strategic plan can be kind of the same. You're trying to, without a strategic plan, you're kind of putting out fires constantly. And you don't really have an organized way to determine, okay, these are the things we need to focus on. So strategic plan helps with that. So strategic planning answers a couple questions: where we are now, where are we going, and how will we get there? And you can kind of think of like a strategic plan, like a roadmap. The where we are now is defined by your mission, values, and environmental scan. It tells you where you as an organization are currently in this current state. Where are we going is defined by your vision, goals, and objectives. It's kind of like, where do we see ourselves in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do we want to be? And then the action plan is determining how do we actually get there, and how do we, make all these things that we want to do happen. Did my computer freeze? How to catch up a little bit. You can also kind of think of your strategic plan as a house. Your mission, values, and vision are the foundation of your house. Your goals are the walls, your roof, things that you don't change up too often, but are kind of a base structure of your organization. And your objectives are going to be things that you change out every couple years, like curtains or furniture. And these are things that are going to be the length of your strategic plan, kind of almost like mini goals. You can think of it like that. So here's our mission statement, and we did work with staff to define this. I don't think we changed it up too much, but this is the current mission statement, which is protect and serve Californians by setting, communicating, and enforcing standards for safe and competent mental health practices. Don't believe there are going to be any changes to this, but no? Okay, perfect. We're good. And these are our values, and we did make some changes with staff. And here I have highlighted which ones we updated. So we added in accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also professionalism. And from what we removed customer service, quality, and respect. So the one on the left-hand side, does that look good for our values? Good, okay, perfect. All right, and then the environmental scan, we're gonna be using this as our basis for everything that we worked on today. You should have gotten in your board meeting materials, but this, to talk about exactly what is the environmental scan, this is a study on how your stakeholders perceive the board in both the effectiveness when it comes to all those goal areas and a response to the profession in which you operate in the world trends. And those are like your opportunities and threats, anything outside the board. Here's our vision statement. And I don't believe we had really any changes here. But as it's written now, all Californians are able to access the highest quality mental health services. Good, okay, perfect. Staff did a good job.
Question for you.
Yes, I can go back.
I didn't realize you were asking for our input in some of this as
Yes.
well. Okay, could you go back to the mission statement, please?
Sure.
Practices. Okay, I get it. However, if the objective here is for us to incorporate DEI, we know that some institutions have created separate DEI statements. I believe when my first year on the board, I was wondering do we have a statement here? So is it possible to incorporate some DEI language in the mission? I mean, what a great place to start.
Yeah, that's something we can definitely do. I believe some other boards have included diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the mission statement. So that's
Mhm.
definitely something that we can include here as well. Do we want to workshop it now, or do we want to have it be kind of like something that we just do offline?
Can you bring it back? Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me make myself a note because I will forget.
Thank you.
Okay. So here we are, the vision statement. And with your vision statement, this is kind of like, we've accomplished everything. We're in utopia is how I like to describe it. And so this would be, that vision of the future. I personally don't think any changes need to be made to it, but oh, just kidding, I do have one. What was the change? All Californians have access to the highest quality mental health. Oh, yes. The only change I have is instead of are able to, we changed this to have, because we're assuming that we did accomplish that and everyone does have access. Yes.
So in the mission, we only use the word competent. In the vision, we use highest quality. Those two things do not agree in my mind.
Okay.
So I think the place to address it would probably be in the mission.
Okay.
Because highest quality would be a goal that we would have for the people we're working for and with.
In that case, do we want to change competent to highest quality? And is that something that's within the board's mandate to ensure highest quality, or just competent?
Steve, maybe you can answer that question about the mandate.
We would love to accomplish the highest quality, but that's something hard for us to do. I think when we were originally, what was it, 4 years ago, looking at that competence, I think some of the other words that came into play, what we were deliberating too, was culturally competent, I think. And I believe that maybe when we went through the DEI, when we had the discussion back then, we may have gotten rid of the culturally competent. So protect Californians in setting standards.
Did we get rid of it or did we move it? Because culturally competent is irrelevant. Very
And I
relevant.
think the discussion was around what's safe and what's competent
Yeah, but we
practice. I
didn't get
mean,
rid of it.
it's how the board would maybe look at what competent means. I think incompetent when I'm looking at that means that you're culturally responsive, you know how to actually operate, competently with your clients, and that does include cultural competency and such.
I think you may have hit the nail on the head, and we'd have to go back and look at the notes, but culturally responsive and culturally competent, I remember we did have that discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe
So that was my point. Culturally responsive is the more appropriate term.
All right. So it sounds like instead of competent, we want to strike out competent and write culturally responsive. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That would be my request.
Is that only talking about culture versus when we're talking about competence in a broader term?
That's also
So-
correct. I was looking, it's under section 4980.34, the legislative intent of what the board does. And it actually doesn't mention competence or highest quality. So I think the board is free to use inside its mission, whatever. I mean, obviously we wouldn't put incompetent, but to me, competent is a different legal term than highest quality.
And how would proficient work?
And Eleanor, you had something, right?
Yeah, I was saying that the word competent seems to encompass more than culture. You know, it's the standards and a whole lot of other things. So I think to erase competency and replace it with just cultural responsiveness kind of can take a lot of the standards out. So I don't see the two as the same.
Yeah, I mean, I see what Ms. Uribe is saying.
What about safe, culturally, and competent care?
So I'm trying to,
Culturally wouldn't work. Never mind. Yeah,
but
culturally.
remember, we started here because the vision says highest quality.
Yeah.
Mission says competent. Those two things do not jive.
Um,
And
What I-
that's why I was bringing the point into the conversation.
Yeah.
Could we possibly leave competent in the mission statement and instead take out highest from the vision and just have it be access to quality mental health services?
So I'm going to push back against that because I do not think we should set our standards low. I think we should send our standards high and try and achieve them rather than use wordage that takes it low and look what we did and pat ourselves on the back. So I would rather challenge ourselves as a board and put the highest level of expectation in our mission and our vision, and then work to achieve that as best we can. So we went back to mission. For me, safe, proficient, and culturally responsive.
I'm gonna copy some of this stuff over just so we can have a look at them back to back or right next to each other. So give me 1 second. And I may ask you to repeat. Okay, so we have protect for safe. Okay, do you mind repeating?
So for safe, comma, proficient, comma, and culturally responsive mental health practices.
I already have responsive there.
And yes, I use the Oxford comma.
Okay, yes, I did put the Oxford comma. So on the right-hand side, we have what Board Member Sobek is suggesting. Do we like that as for our mission statement? And just a reminder, our mission statement is what you as an organization currently do.
Yeah, just for feedback, I think adding in the wording culturally responsive, it is getting us to DEA. So yeah, we're kind of helping get the work started for you here. And Eleanor, I totally agree with you with the word competency. Like I think we moved it around, so it may come up again in our work here, but I do respect your point.
Yeah, I believe the proficient can substitute for competence, right? I think it's a synonym.
Yeah, in my mind, if our practitioners aren't competent, I mean, to me, it's like it's a given.
Yeah.
You know, especially if we're using the term highest quality. Does that not say? Yeah.
You know what, for me, competency seems more clear, even though proficient is possible. It's just because, like, according to the standards we have with the CSWE, we measure our students based on their competency, completing the standards. So for me, it almost seems like if we can kind of follow along with that, even though proficient could technically be used, it's just, I feel like it's not as clear.
And I mean, if you want to go, that's similar to what we are looking at in the exams. It's we're looking for minimal competency.
Yeah.
I think maybe you can use the other words in the vision to kind of like maybe, but just that competency is kind of what, as a board, we have to set those competence standards. Proficient though, I mean, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think we're striking it, Eleanor. I think it's like the context and shaping the language of the mission statement. So to me, we're putting it in context right now. And like John was saying, being consistent, what is in the mission statement is not the same as the point we're making in our vision. And so we're looking at the context of the language being used in those two areas.
Yeah, and I'm not saying to take out the culturally responsive. I was saying, well, maybe keep it with competent and you could use culturally responsive. I think it, because they're kind of touching
In the mission?
areas.
You want to keep it in the mission?
Yeah, but I was saying I think competent is probably a clearer word than proficient.
Okay, then I will push back and think that competency fits better with the vision, since we're talking about highest quality. Can we see the vision again? I can't
Sure.
see it. I don't have a screen.
And I can also, if you want me to, I can put them on the same slides. So you can kind of see them next to each other.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Highest quality, doesn't that reference competency? Yes. Highest quality, doesn't that reference competency? Right, and he said minimal. Right.
Okay, so I put the mission statement to the right of the vision. You can kind of see them right next to each other.
And the other thing for the highest quality, I mean, that's kind of how do you measure that?
So vision statements are supposed to be
Yeah.
kind of lofty.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, okay, you know, we accomplished everything that we wanted to do as a board, right? And we don't have to exist anymore. So the vision for that, you're kind of like, okay, what would that vision of that perfect utopia be? And it is all Californians have access to the highest quality mental health services.
Then that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, and how do we feel about the mission statement, the proposed one with proficient? Still kind of,
I like competent because, as Eleanor was saying, it's consistent with messaging through testing and everything else. So, and to me, competent is more clear than proficient. I mean, I know, you know, there's synonyms for each other, but if you're talking about consistency of language across many organizations, then it's more of a common language.
and we can just, you know, for sake of time, we can put a note to workshop proficient or competent, since it seems like they're, you know, differing opinions. And I can work offline with Steve on that to see if we can try to get that. Otherwise, we could talk about this all day.
I think that's a good idea. I think you should just wordsmith it offline and speak with council as to whether or not it's legally competent, because otherwise you have a mission that's pointing to a place that the legislature didn't send us to.
All right. So we'll put a pin in that and we'll come back to that offline. Okay. So these are your goals as a board. They are labeled here in the old order. I apologize, I meant to update this slide. But we did shift things around, mostly moving administrative services to the first goal and then everything kind of down from there. But your goals are kind of your everyday, day-to-day functions as a board, such as, you know, licensing, examination, enforcement. And oftentimes people will confuse goals and objectives together when it comes to strategic planning. And how I like to explain it is that, like I mentioned before, your goals are long-term. They're your day-to-day functions. They're, you know, everything you do as a board. Your objectives are little short-term mini goals that go underneath each goal area. And they're only for the length of your strategic plan. And so that's how you, that's the difference between the two. Because oftentimes people will say, you know, this goal for under licensing, it's like, no, that's objective. So they're little mini goals. And so when it comes to objectives, we have about anywhere between 3 to 6 per goal area. And we're going to be discussing the ones that we workshopped with staff today. We may also potentially develop some new ones based on, you know, if you have anything in the environmental scan that you felt wasn't addressed or is really important that needs to be put in there. So we have the opportunity for that as well. And just as a reminder for roles and responsibilities, something you want to remember is that the board's mandate is consumer protection. And you want to balance that with available resources because staff will be ultimately accomplishing all these objectives in your strategic plan. So just something to be mindful of when we're, coming up with some additional objectives or if we're refining the ones that were already created to make sure that it is, doable by staff and making sure that staff have the resources in order to do it. We don't want to give them something they can't achieve. All right, so what we'll do is we're going to review and refine some of the objectives created by staff. We'll try, I know this is a little different than what we normally do for strategic planning. So I apologize if I'm a little frazzled. But we're going to try not to wordsmith too much, but mostly just Tricia and I do have some suggestions, but mostly just determining, is this an objective we want in our strategic plan? And if so, then we'll work it from there. And then, like I mentioned earlier, if you do have additional objectives that you want to add, we'll talk about, what is the problem to solve or just issue to address. And then we'll talk about, what is that solution to address that issue.
Sarah?
Yes, go ahead.
I believe I have an additional goal I'd like us to consider. Is that something to do towards the end or where would be best for your flow of work today?
Go ahead and suggest it. And what would it might be?
So I'm really trying to look at the environment that we're living in currently in the state of California. And I'm wondering if we can craft anywhere a type of goal that looks at protection support for marginalized and endangered communities right now. Looking at systems to protect clinical files from search and seizure, looking at ways for access for therapists to find tools for keeping their clients safe, controlling the confidential flow of information on electric health record systems, and guidelines for clinicians working with marginalized communities. So that's kind of a goals and objective version I saw there, but I need to know how that works in this process.
So I feel like that might be something that would fall under, I don't know, such a,
Yeah, it's,
I feel like it might fall under outreach or even potentially legislation or regulation. but-
correct. I think legislation,
Um,
regulation.
I highly disagree with that.
Oh.
I think it actually could be a very strong focus goal on the work that we do because we do interact with schools, with communities, with clinicians. So I think setting it up as its own goal actually has a lot of
Oh,
strength
cool.
using the resources we already have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking objective goal. Okay, that's what I mean. Oops,
Nope, I want to top line it if we can. But I'm
I-
actually trying to understand the process of bringing that into the
Okay.
conversation.
Typically in strategic plan, when we're at this stage, we don't add a new goal, but that is something we could talk about. We may want to workshop, kind of what that, goal area title would be and what would be some objectives that go under that. And maybe I do want to put this at the end just because it's so new. And there might be some things that get covered in the other areas, but we'll see. And if anything, I could work on this offline with Steve as well. So I'm gonna put a star next to that to come back to that, if that's all
I-
right.
Sarah, I just want to mention, I think that's a necessary component of what we're doing. I agree with John.
Okay.
Ultimately, our mandate is public protection, and
Mhm.
because this is a exigent threat, I think we need to include it in the discussion at some point.
Yeah. All right. In that case, for that one, I'll save it for the end, and then hopefully we can breeze through everything so we have time to discuss about that. So you know what that means? That means you have to agree to everything that staff came up with. All right. And then I should have introduced this earlier, but I have the instructions here. So I did give you all paddles, and this is for you to indicate whether we are ready to move on for an item, and you'll show the green fast forward icon, like, let's move, let's go. Or if you feel like you need to discuss an item some more, we have the red pause to say, I would like to pause and talk some more about this item. Okay. And please don't hit each other with these. I worked really hard to make them. All right. I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to continue keep doing a bunch of talking. So we're going to go right into our first goal area, which is administrative services. And here, Trisha is going to scribe for me while I talk. So I'm going to move over the computer for her real quick. All right. Okay. So our first goal area is administrative services, and we have our goal area description here, which we've refined with staff. And then if you have the environmental scan in front of you, administrative services is going to be on pages 34 to 39. So if you want to quickly look over the weaknesses in that section, you can. All right, and talking about some of the weaknesses, sorry, can I? So from the environmental scan, some of the weaknesses for this area that people talked about were improving, they felt like communication needed to be improved. Paper processing was slow. People felt that there needed to be more staff and more availability from staff. And they felt that office supplies needed regular orders and to improve customer service. So I have check marks next to all the ones that I felt that when we worked with staff on these, we kind of addressed all these weaknesses. So that's why those check marks are there. And so if we go over to the suggested objectives from staff, and you should have that in your objective workbook that you got. And so here, we'll kind of go in order, starting with the first one. So the first one, really the only suggestion I have here is to just change it to update board forms to be concise, clear, and consistent. That's about it. How do we feel about that first objective that staff came up with?
Paddles. You
Hey.
good, green to go?
Oh, sorry.
Green to go or red to stop?
Yes.
I have a question, and it's not specific to this objective, but all 5 of the objectives.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we are starting the conversation with diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, I would imagine that that conversation follows through with any of these objectives, but I don't see any discussion of disparities or populations or any measurable outcomes addressing any facet of DEIA. I see a lot of attempts to increase efficiency. I'm not sure if efficiency is the same as equity. So I'm wondering where in these 5 there is any attempt to address equity.
Well, in this one, this is strictly just this right here is strictly about the administrative process in-house and communication and stuff.
I understand that. So then am I also understanding correctly? There are no issues with diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, or justice in any form in the administration?
I cannot say that for certain. But
Okay.
yeah.
So then where is that here?
I feel like at least for improving communication, this is just one example that's kind of addressing that, because by improving, how you speak to either your applicants or, consumers that are calling in, that's kind of, making things more accessible, if that makes sense. I feel like that might be one example where it could be addressed. We can embed more in here and like tweak them, but I feel like at least that one is one example.
Justin, if I could kind of jump in, I think there's two areas where we could maybe look to expand or work on for this. And I think one term I see in here, and the number one is this user experience. And it's kind of a new area and for a lot of companies and public agencies, the whole concept of customer experience. And I think the concept of the user and the customer experience, a lot of that is dependent on where that user and where that customer is coming from and how they need to receive the information, how they can receive the information, the access they have. So maybe we could expand on that concept of user experience to kind of work towards that. And then, I mean, I think the communication is an area there too, but I think there should be some recognition of meeting people where they are. So it's not just us communicating the way we're comfortable communicating in the way we like to and the ways that are convenient, but are we expanding beyond that to meet people where they are?
Yeah, and to be clear, I think all of these objectives will be positive steps forward. None of these are explicitly DEIA. If we are okay with that, then that's fine. But we shouldn't have to add, 12 sentences to explain the objective to make it sort of fit DEI.
Yeah, and I think maybe you might be jumping a little bit ahead. I think maybe the specific, addressing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility will come up in the action planning step where we assign individual tasks to each of those. And I believe Steve came up with some.
Yeah, I have some tasks, but because we are focused on DEIA with internally, it may not be reflective in the actual language here, but that's something that we do consider in everything we do, like updating forms and stuff. How can we make those accessible? Communication, kind of what Wendy was saying. So it is incorporated into the actual work because that's what our focus has to be, and we need to have that. So I don't know if that makes sense. So on a ground level, it will be incorporated, maybe not into these words here.
But is there any harm?
But I think
is there any harm in including some verbiage here?
Is there an objective that, because I'm trying to get a better idea, like for an objective for this, for our administration, for kind of like the board operation, do you like, I think you're thinking of a bigger kind of objective too, or do you have some thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that if we are taking equity seriously, we should be speaking to equity, not downstream equity, right? If we're talking about user experience, then we should be speaking to diversity or equity or inclusion in that. If we're talking about accessibility as a ingredient in paperless process as a product of accessibility, then we should speak to that, right?
Okay.
It I think doesn't make sense to me to be foregrounding the importance of equity while also not engaging in explicitly in explicit terms that talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just sort of doing hand waving and saying, well, we'll get to that downstream in the action plan. And I think more than that, I would want to see an objective specifically about like an equity impact report assessing measurable outcomes on a quarterly or yearly basis, exam rates and processing times, all of the things that administration work is doing already, but assessing the equity impact of each of these.
I mean, I agree. As the administrator, I'm like with the actual resources we have to be able to do we are looking, that's one of our objectives too, is to get, the resources to do what we want. So I mean that.
But kindly,
yeah.
gently, I don't know how to make sense of the statement, we do this work on the ground, and then also the statement, we don't have the resources to do what you just said. Because those are one and the same, right? You're either doing this work, you're not. And if you're doing it, then we should be able to see the measurable outcomes of that.
I guess what I'm trying to so as I mean the groundwork, looking at our forms, which we already do, we have staff, we look at forms, we can look and pinpoint that, looking at DEI perspective, the language we use in the forms, the accessibility. We got that. We have resources, or it might be easy to get resources on that. If we're doing equity assessments, I would have to I'm not sure how we'd be able to do that. I'm just being blatantly honest right now. But I see the value. I mean, it's definitely, there's definitely value in that.
So for the next, gosh, it looks like 40 slides, something like that, the board should just take your word that we're going to do the work, but we won't see any actual audit of that. We won't see any byproduct product of that. Because we don't have the resources to actually show us that we're doing it.
Well, no, I mean, if you want to put, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
I want to understand, what are we actually capable of doing?
So
What are we doing?
like for an example, if we put on there, we need to do an equity, or we want to do equity assessments of, exam pass rates or whatnot. That might be a long-term goal, and I think we might be able to eventually do that, but it would take some time. I think that's what it's because currently right now with the staffing resources, I'm not sure how we would give that the honest time it would need. So, I mean, it definitely objectives, this is a 4-year plan, so if you want to, if we can craft something that, an objective like that, but I see what you're saying with everything. Yeah.
So,
No.
Steve,
I hear you.
No,
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
Thank you.
Does it make sense though? Kind of.
Okay. No, I love this conversation. And if I could possibly make a recommendation based on the exchange here, a way to incorporate DEI in goal number 1, based on what I just heard, is to possibly kind of look into the possibility of creating a language policy or a language protocol, if you will. This is a best practice for DEIA. For example, when some of us, when we introduce ourselves, we use our pronouns. In some organizations, it's common that when we introduce ourselves, that we use those pronouns. That's a respectful way to identify someone's preference, orientation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I'm looking at the environmental scan, when it says improve customer service and improve communication, are we taking that into consideration? To take this a step further, this should be happening in the forms that we are using coming out of this office here. Are we using correct language according to our societal views on DEIA when it comes to gender, sex, race, and all those things? Those have since DEIA has been really in the forefront of things. All corporations are updating their language policies, their forms, their applications, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just want to maybe recommend that we look at how we're using language in goal number 1 and possibly adding that as a possibility. And just one other thing I wanted to add in this area, unless you want to speak to this, what they just said, and then come back.
no, actually what you just said, because I think it'll help what you're, I want to add on.
Oh, of course, yeah, and then come back to me.
Okay, so looking at goal 1.1, which is assess, update, and standardize all board forms, that is very, very coded privilege speaking for these forms are all in English and they're going to remain in English while we do the process. So what we might consider is access, update, and standardize inclusive of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility standards, all board forms. That then throws in what we're talking about and gives the action steps real specific goals that we want to make sure that you continue with this expansion in, because I know you've done some, we have some stuff in more languages, but that actually maybe needs to be part of the goal. So then the action steps include the idea, okay, we are now going to make sure we have it available in English, Spanish, and Mandarin, so that we're looking at how to shape those action steps with a little bit more. Because right now, standardized forms is a really privileged, very white word, okay? So by adding that little bit of language, I'm thinking then we're addressing what you're talking about and at least putting something in concrete for Mr. Huff's point of view that says that's where we want some of the action steps to be taken.
And John, would you say that, and maybe Dr. Walker, you're going to get to this, but could we include language like that in 1.3 as well? Because I think how we communicate with people is.
Yeah, you're right on point. 'Cause
Okay,
that was
so I'll let you
my
say your-
follow-up, but I like that, but I also want to, so let's put that in our notes here. I think we could add it there. 1.3, you said, right?
1.1.
Just going,
1.1 for
I'm
me.
sorry, 1.1. Okay.
Could I add that maybe it's adding like a lens to it? So saying that, this work happens, but as it happens, we're always looking in a culturally responsive way to ensure blah, 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 blah. Like it's a statement that says the objective is to do this, but also making sure it's within that culturally sensitive lens so that if it's a form and we're talking about people with vision disabilities, we're thinking about that. Because I want to say also, paperless can also be less access. Like if you go paperless, if I don't have access, then I could also, so I'm just saying maybe there's a way to have an objective and a lens, I don't know.
Can I offer a suggestion that might kind of speak to what you're saying? Is I like the idea of an objective to come up with a kind of a protocol where a guiding light in, because this is dealing, like I said, about the board administration. So a kind of guiding principles on the various aspects of the board and how we relate to those through a DEIA lens, which then, I mean, kind of we could lay out, when we're looking at exams, this is what we are looking at, but at the same time, here's some of the maybe steps almost like a separate strategic plan, kind of these are the things that we think would be good for that. And then it's something that we could incorporate as an objective when looking at everything we do. And that's something we could work on at a board level to evaluate to make sure that we are, does that
Yes,
sound maybe?
thank you, Steve. I think that's right on point. And guiding principles, AKA language policy, you're just kind of putting it in the scope of our work. I'm looking at it as a best practice, but I like your choice of words because I think we could easily develop guiding principles based on all what we've all just said. I think that's a really good idea.
And then it would drive, looking at forms, looking at exams, looking at anything we do. And that's something that we can come back to when we're.
And let me just add what I want to say before we get lost, but I think that does capture our point here. I just wanted to add, when I look at from the environmental scan on goal 1, for me, the ask is accountability systems, right? To ensure operational efficiency, if we're looking at that. So I would add to 1.4 of your proposed objectives, something very specific. You say regularly evaluate. Okay, in my mind, having a, anyway, I would add something, and I'm just a recommendation, an internal audit of workflows to identify our redundancies and process inefficiencies. And, in other words, because I see what you're doing here. And if you're going to regularly evaluate that, my recommendation is just a way to do that.
But don't we get reported on that regularly about what the challenges are around staffing resources and demands? Isn't that something that every so often you report on? And
Yeah, it doesn't say that though. It just says regularly evaluate. Again, I'm just like, you can do an internal audit. We could be specific by adding on what tool you're going to use to regularly evaluate and maintain
so
adequate staffing.
regarding 1.4, that was one I was actually going to suggest removing because it is something that happens regularly as like a day-to-day thing. Typically for your strategic plan, you don't want to include day-to-day tasks, which is why I was going to suggest maybe removing that one. But if the internal audit of workflows feels like something that's kind of like we'll start implementing this process of doing that.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
Right? It's very and measurable.
But also it sounds like you may already do those audits, maybe?
Correct, we
Okay.
do. I mean, and that's kind of the process with the BCPs and looking at staffing and stuff. You go through the audit process, the workflow and stuff. And we did go through organizational improvement with.
We see it, where do we find it? So it needs to be in the plan.
Well, what she's saying is, I mean, honestly, that's my responsibility. It's not even an objective. That's what I'm, that's where he's saying I report on, this is what we're doing. And so it is kind of one of those things where I know we put it in there, but it is usually in strategic plans for state. It's like, well, you should be doing that on a yearly basis or whatever. And
I will let
constantly,
it go
so-
and let someone else speak, but if they're from the environmental scan, if you're capturing that, we're doing what you're doing, but this is still coming up, we need to be more transparent with that. So I'll let it go.
I think to jump in on that though, about not removing it, is that a huge amount of feedback in the environmental scan has to do with our response times and processing times, and that is entirely related to staffing. And because, it's a large organization, it moves slowly, government moves slowly, adding staff gets done in a very lengthy, very evaluative process. So I think it's something that we need to keep on our radar, that this pursuit of making sure that we have the sufficient resources available to serve the customers that we're here to serve and licensees. I see some value, maybe not how it's worded here, but some value and focus on that. We're aware that there are some shortfalls in this area, although we have to work within the system that we're in.
In that case, we'll keep on point 4. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to, I have just a very blunt topic. I think the transition to paperless process should be moved up. Because by the way, and we got raked over the coals in some of the comments. I mean, it was really one I mean, if you look at the external stakeholder statistics, it is either evaluating us as poor or very poor in terms of processing times. And it's almost one standard deviation below the mean. So I think if you transition to a paperless process, it's going to take a hit out of our processing time. And I think that will help accessibility as well, particularly for people who are having to fill out paper forms, and it's going to reduce staff time as well. So that's what I'd say. I also think the conversation regarding equity and diversity really needs to happen. Mr. Huft is right. If you want us to integrate DEI, it should be integrated in really every single one of our goals.
I have a kind of a clarifying question. So just for my understanding, and you made reference to it very briefly, and I'm trying to just connect it a little bit here. So you mentioned action steps that are going to be tied
Correct.
to objectives. Is that correct? Specific objectives?
Yeah. Do you want me to explain it a little bit, or do you want to?
Yeah, because that might help me follow up with my next.
Yeah. So basically, that's the step that comes after strategic planning, where, you approve your strategic plan. These are all the, objectives that you want to focus on. And then Solid works with the staff to say, okay, this is, all the objectives that, the board says that they want to do. What are the tasks that you need to do in order to accomplish that objective? And there we say, okay, well, we have to do step 1 and then step 2 and step 3. And we detail those out. And this is just like, this isn't like typically action plans aren't public documents, but you can make it one if you want it to be. And then we provide the board with a tracker that they can use to mark off everything that they complete, when they completed it and when they completed it, because we set deadlines for those as well. So like if, for instance, one of your objectives is to update your website, right? Some of those steps might be, contact Office of Information Services, discuss with them on website layouts, include various links or whatever, right? And so we detail out each individual step and when those need to be accomplished by, and then staff use that tracker to say like, okay, we got this one finished, or this one got delayed because of COVID or something. That happened to a lot of boards during COVID. But And then it also has, that tracker has charts that tell you exactly, as the staff are updating it, this is how much of this objective we've completed, and this is how much of that goal we completed. And so I know some boards really like it. I know specifically Osteopathic Medical, I shout them out every time. Osteopathic Medical Board likes to show off their action plan tracker in their board meetings to show exactly where they are in terms of their strategic plan. And they actually finished a bunch of theirs early and decided to add new ones in for the length of their plan. And that's something that you as a board can also do with that tracker and kind of, you know, keep yourselves accountable with that. And
Yeah, so you nailed exactly what my question and what comment was going to be is how do we monitor very specifically these objectives? And I would say, yes, absolutely, that should be very transparent, and we should be informed of that as part of this board for sure.
And I can say I've been melding over, and staff out there they're tired of me showing them the tracker, but honestly, I've already been working on tasks if these objectives are kind of okay with the board, and really trying to figure out how best to track that. And the tracker is nice.
Yay.
I'm hopefully going to use it. But yeah, that's where the tasks are items that will definitely will be brought to the board to say we've done this, and then definitely showing you the whole
Yeah,
as we're moving through the
because
process. So
as we're looking at the objectives, right, they're very abstract.
yeah,
Right. So I think it would help it would certainly help me understand how are we actually operationalizing these objectives and measuring them against what they're listed up here. So I think that would help me a ton.
I have an idea. Under transition to a paperless process, could we have that done within 1 year?
well, it depends on when you want to start that.
I thought it was ongoing. So, I mean, we've mentioned transitioning to a paperless process before. Can we complete that process in 1 year?
1 year would be pretty ambitious because it's not just us. We have to work with other various organizations within DCA, and they also have workload, but it is, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I feel like the deadlines might be something that
That's
I
kind
know
of
I
what-
keep saying like it might be in the action planning step, but that does sound like something that might be in action planning because something you might want to think about with the paperless processing, like Steve mentioned, working with a bunch of other people, like when are you actually going to be able to, you know, start that?
And I think that's the action planning part where then, like, when we get the objectives for that one, to actually sit down with management and myself to figure out, you know, how's the fastest we can do it, and in looking at those.
I think my frustration is that this is supposed to have been taken place. We've mentioned it before at previous board meetings, and we're now saying it's not going to happen for a year. So I understand the frustration of some of the external stakeholders when they say we should be transitioning to a paperless process. We have 140 comments, you know, indicating that the licensing times are too long. All of the evidence in the environmental scan says that the licensing is taking too long, probably because of our transition to a paperless process. So if we could put a timeline or a date somewhere in an action item or a proposed objective, I think that would be very helpful. Because we're looking at this data, which is telling us to do something, and we're not really doing it.
And that's where we come in with, like, we're talking about the action items. And that's where we could actually show you, like, here online, this is where we're at. Definitely with the registration applications, our next step is to look at licensees. But that's where the action plan will come into step to keep task on for the staff level to say due date here.
Okay.
And then, because it's a matter of, especially with the online stuff, it's really not, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but it's a matter of not necessarily staff resources. It's outside of my control, but we are, we're getting closer to that. I know we keep telling, but yeah, this year, we'll get, but that's what I'm thinking. It's probably better for us to then come and you can see, you know, online, this is what online, we've already got it in the task chart that we're working on, but the various applications and when possibly we can get them on. We haven't put the dates down, but, and then if the board is like, well, why is this going to take, we can have an explanation or we can look at it again to say, this is
Okay.
what, yeah, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm going to go way back in time, but I'd like to go back to 1.1. I would like to propose language change. I understand as an agency, we're working on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and we're putting it through that lens, but there is still always going to be implicit bias in that process. And that's why I think occasionally specific language will really help with this. And so for me, I'm wondering if some wording such as for 1.1, implement diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility mandates to assess, update, and standardize inclusive DEI there's somewhere in there we put it that it's very specific that we're doing that. And also, this is a thing.
Sorry, real quick. Do you mind repeating that just a little bit slower?
Sure. So implement diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility mandates to assess, update, and standardize all board forms to maximize clarity and improve user experience.
Okay.
That then gives us a ability to take action steps out of that are very specific and hopefully will catch a little bit of the bias that every single one of us is carrying.
So I'm going to add a little bit to here too, and I want to kind of it dovetails with John's comment about these, but so I'm looking again down here, and the objectives according to the guidance that we've been given from this document is that the objectives should be specific and measurable, right? The action plans, I look at this like a treatment plan, right? Your goals are like your marathon. You're running the long-term goal. Your objectives need to be very specific. Your action plan is effectively, these are the ways in which we're going to accomplish that objective. I'm not seeing anywhere in these objectives how these are specifically going to be measured. These still very much feel abstract to me. So like even taking this very first one that we just reframed, how are we assessed? Like what is the outcome? How are we measuring that outcome? I guess I'm a little bit disconnected between the objectives as written with all of these objectives in terms of how we're truly measuring these. Like what's the time frame on it? How do we know what we're measuring? And does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I kind of understand. So I'm going to use 1.1 as an example specifically, and with John's edits to that, how you would, this one is measurable because if you updated all those forms, that is something that is, measurable. Okay, we updated all these. Now we know that this task is complete, right? That's how you would measure that. I think that was it. The time frame is usually, once again, is usually in the action planning phase. And oftentimes that is because, delays happen. Sometimes something takes higher priority than the other one. So if you, put, within a year here, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by locking yourselves too much in the actual strategic plan, because the strategic plan, if you want to make updates or edit it, has to go through board approval and motion voting on it. Whereas at least with the action plan, if things do get delayed or you finish something faster, that doesn't require any motions or approvals and can just be changed really easily. So
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I understand, because some of them do feel like that, but others don't feel like that in some regard. And so I'm just trying to understand how we're measuring some of these things, because even then, like to assess and updates, like some of these we could say, sure, they're measurable, but others may not necessarily, at least for me, I'm not kind of seeing that here.
you can kind of think of like it that everything that's in the strategic plan, as far as your objectives, you want completed by the time the strategic plan is done. Not necessarily, by 2027 or as long as it gets done by the end of the strategic plan. So if this strategic plan is 4 years, it'd be what, 2030? So by 2030, you want that's your deadline to complete all of these. So you can kind of think of it that way.
Okay.
And that it's, I kind of look at it, my gut, this is kind of like I'm looking at it, this is my mandate now in a way. And so, because I have to manage everything to get this done. And so, where was I going with that? I was going with that somewhere.
Cool.
Trying to think, where was I going to go with that? So yeah, it is kind of, I believe I've been looking at these objectives and we've been going over it. And my belief is that although they might seem a little nebulous, they are all measurable. So
I'm going to push back. a
And
little.
also, just to help Steve out a little bit, every time we get an executive report,
Sure.
the strategic plan update is in there and it shows us what's been taken action on since last we think, what's accomplished, what's still to be done. So there are places where we are getting that information, and I just think that's important to recognize too.
And just as a side note, I mean, that is my goal with this one. We currently have that strategic plan that we present. I want to present a more, thanks, Annette Metzman getting on me on that stuff. So no, but you encouraged me to give more detail for you, so that you can actually see not only the things that we've accomplished, but I think it would be good once we get the objectives down to be able to show you, here are some of the steps we're looking at. Here's some of the dates that we're looking at. And then, that can be up in the discussion during the board. If you see a date that you're like, why the heck are they saying it's going to take 4 years? We can have that discussion and we can kind of figure out, work on it.
So when I gave my suggestion for the verbiage, something happened here that is a very specific thing that I am trying to push back against. I specifically read out all 4 parts of that, and you went for the DEIA. I actually do not want that to be the language I'm offering for this. I actually wanted to say diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility.
I was, just to kind of comment on that, for this part, we do kind of just, shorthand things, but when it comes to the actual strategic plan, I do spell out all those objectives. So in your actual plan, that would say diversity, equity, inclusion, but just, for sake of ease.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's a very important thing for
Yes.
me right now because DEI has become a buzzword.
Yes.
These words individually have more meaning. So
Yeah.
it's very important to me to do
Yes.
that. Thank you.
So just on the PowerPoint, it'll be acronyms. I know you guys had lunch at 12 and we are past 12. Did you want to break now or do we want to continue with this, power through this objective or not objective, goal area?
Staff need a
Break for lunch. People are hungry.
We're fine. Let's finish one, maybe if we can.
Okay, so let's finish this goal 1 and then we'll take a break.
Okay. Okay, so we're good on 1.1? Yes? Okay. For 1.2, the only suggestion I had for this was to, instead of just transition to paperless process, and also it sounds like we're gonna switch this in order. I made a note for that.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll withdraw my request.
Implement online applications to advance the board's record digitization efforts. But we can strike that if that does not sound appropriate or.
I think I wanted to I'm including in that too. We have a lot of archive stuff and really cleaning up that. So it's keeping us on not only to a paperless process online, but also a paperless process in-house.
Okay.
Is kind of where we were going with that objective.
Maybe transition to paperless processes for both applications and internally.
And applications and internally, I guess.
I have a question.
It's not just application, so it's changing address. I think it needs to be external facing or stakeholder or, because it's not just applications. that
It's not
need to be paperless, yeah.
It's it's not
Or
just
maybe
applications.
for all external and internal documents? No? And
How
then-
about just external and internal? We'll take out the word all because that can't be a guarantee because of confidentiality and stuff like that on some things. Can we also consider paperless and accessible processes?
Thank you. That's what I was going to say as well. I
Thank
think
you.
accessibility needs to be a part of that.
Okay, so we have transition to a paperless and accessible paperless and accessible processes for external and internal, for both external and internal processes.
I mean, I think we don't mean like,
The
'cause
external
some things
process.
require and lend themselves to an online format, not everything,
Yeah.
right? So can we build in some flexibility for the stuff that needs to be paperless? Something
For-
achievable, I guess, because if the goal is, or the objective is to do everything, like how do we make it
Yeah, I
achievable,
mean,
right?
Attachment behaviors.
I mean, maybe you guys can wordsmith that, so it's.
Yeah.
We don't need to do
I'll
that.
think, yeah, okay, let me.
Attachment B. Let me go back. Item 6.
Where applicable.
Oh, that's what it is. I was looking at the wrong thing. Thanks.
Okay. Does that look okay or no?
There we go.
Everyone's hungry, so. Okay. And then 1.3, we have create language protocol to guide communication processes. The only suggestion I had here was to change it to enhance stakeholder communication for improved timeliness and experience, although we did add culturally competent in here.
Should we go with culturally responsive?
Yeah, we did, because we changed that in the mission statement, so that is a good catch.
And then I just had a question here because the way this reads right now to me is that the objective is to create the protocol, and I think the protocol is a part of updating the whole communications process. So I don't want to kind of lose that. The protocol will sort of guide that update, but I don't want to lose the need to actually then go through and still do the update that's needed too. So I think it's just a wordsmithing thing. I think that's,
Yeah,
my guess is that's what we all intended.
Steve, question for you. Internally, do you already have language protocols?
We don't have anything written necessarily, but no, so.
So that would be no. Thank you. I didn't know we were ready to move to adopt versus create. So, or maybe it should say create and adopt since it's a 4-year plan.
Well, yeah, create and adopt would be, yeah.
Do we want? So as far as language protocol works, it's kind of like a weird phrase. And something that we do want to try to keep in mind is plain language. That way, if anyone looks at the strategic plan, they can kind of understand your intent. Does creating a communication plan to address these issues sound a little bit more feasible, or create and implement a communication plan?
I'm gonna say it makes more sense to me than protocol.
Okay.
Honestly.
Protocol kind of makes it sound like you're robots.
I mean,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say Dr. Walker, because that's more your expertise area. So I would rely on you for that. Yeah.
Take out processes. Okay. All right, and then we wanted to keep 1.4, so we're good there. Lastly, for 1.5,
Before you move on, with 1.4, are you going to incorporate some of my thoughts, or what did you think about that? Or are you leaving it the way it is? Are
we
we going
have
to wordsmith or what?
conduct internal audit of workflow to identify inefficiencies there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You
And then-
captured it. Because that's really task. It's a task. Thank you.
All right, and then 1.5, the only suggestion I had was to just break this up into 2 separate objectives. The first one being to review and update those procedural manuals. And then the second one is to establish the centralized that centralized digital repository for those manuals. Yeah, okay, so we'll separate those two. Oops. And then we have the one extra one that board member Huff came up with, which we started to capture some notes on the next slide, so we can go back to that real quick. Okay, and this was equity impact with a DEIA policy. So the issue topic was equity impact. And then Trisha wrote down the why address it to assess equity impact of the work being done. Desired outcome would be to see measurable DIA outcomes. And so the last part of that, how is the board going to be able to solve or address this? And also, do any of those things that we wrote there sound accurate? Yeah. And so how is the board going to be able to address this issue? Any ideas?
So, and sorry. Quick question. So would something like develop assessment tools to measure diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility outcomes? Or is that an action item?
No, that would be.
It would be an
that
action
would-
item, but we do kind of capture it here.
But turning it into a goal area, an objective.
Okay, so develop assessment tools. Yeah.
And I'm throwing that out as an idea, open and welcoming feedback.
And- No. And oh, no, I just have a question. So just so I can measure that and direct and figure and come up with tasks, what as in the work being done? That's clear. Does that mean I'm trying to everything we do like, or is it hiring staffing to forms to exams, language
Language
or
access?
more?
I think to Chair Strack's point earlier, this is a large organization and you oversee exam pass rates, regulation, policy, operational changes, processing times. And I think when I'm imagining an equity impact report, I'm imagining an assessment overseeing across groups how these different populations are experiencing these policy changes, pass rates, et cetera, right? That is, it would not make sense to put that under a licensing goal because that's broader than licensing. Education because it's broader than education, right? It's the entire board's operations and procedures. And if I don't want to pigeonhole it into identifying one specific outcome because we are constantly trying to weigh disparate benefits and consequences on a huge variety of outcomes.
Yeah, I know. That makes sense. What about the idea of that establishment? Because I like for legislation and regulation, I know part of the board training is that's like as you're going through the process, you need to take these individuals and you need to take everybody into your thought process when you're deliberating when you're looking at legislation and such. That's what I was thinking of the establishing a protocol because like you said, it is large. It's through the whole organization and whatever we do. Establishing protocol, and I guess the protocol we were talking about earlier of when our eyes are looking at legislation, this is what we need to take into consideration. When we're looking at exams, this is what we need to take into consideration. It doesn't necessarily, and then I have to figure out like what the actions are. But I mean, establishing that protocol, I think would assist, and it's measurable.
Yeah, perhaps that it would be a different objective entirely than what I'm suggesting. I'm not opposing that, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what comes up for me in that is a question of like resources, like who's going to do that work. That's what I was asking Steve, like is within the structure of DCA, is there a group that does this? Is there a group that does these assessments? And it doesn't sound like there is. And so this would require, and it doesn't sound like this capacity is present within existing staff and structures of DCA. So this would involve some external entity, probably at some amount of resources to do. So I guess that's just a question for us to consider, that this is probably a resource issue too. So sorry.
And
Dr. Walker has wanted to talk for a while, and I think I jumped
Well,
ahead of you,
course.
so I'm sorry.
Oh, you're going to me?
Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
thank you. What comes up for me is, and I love this addition, Board Member Huff, I do appreciate this. And again, what I'm hearing in the cross exchange is the idea of a framework. We can create a framework. There are crossovers, there are handoffs within departments that folks aren't aware of. If you develop, it doesn't have to be overblown. I could help you with this. Very streamlined, straightforward, just creating a basic framework would cinch this.
Can I clarify really quick though? We do have an actual DCA, Marlon's on it, the DEIA committee. They don't necessarily do the evaluations and such, but they are looking at, considerably looking at like how we operate administratively, and I think more than that actually too, but how we can, increase our DEIA lens. So they are doing work on that, but not into that perspective. Yeah. No, the actual like studies and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. No.
No, I mean, that's what I was going to say. We have a DCA has a DEI steering committee, and there's a DEI compliance and equity person. I mean, this is precisely what that steering committee kind of is there for. It's to evaluate our equity and the policy effects upon DEI and inclusion communities and see how our policies are working out. So, I mean, this seems to be an opportunity for the steering committee to stretch its legs. And maybe I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, that's fine, but we could at least reach out to them.
What I like about that is it is administrative. It's falling under the umbrella of which we're speaking or addressing at this time. If it's under Steve's purview. I'm just looking at what you say you do, your role in this.
Okay. Hopefully we captured everything. I did ask Tricia to add the collaborate with the DCA DIA steering committee. And then this is something that we can refine offline with Steve. But if we kind of captured the main objective or main ideas for this objective.
Yeah, I guess I just want to check in one last time with Board
Yeah.
Member Huft about whether, I mean, maybe there's an ideal goal and there are some interim goals, and
Yeah.
is this going in the direction of what you originally intended, or have,
Well, I think I would echo Board Member Sovek's earlier comments that I am not particularly interested in compromising on a goal to have some lesser version of it. I don't think a framework is what I'm asking. I think it's helpful. I think I'm asking for a clear audit of measurable outcomes that we say that we are engaging in already, or that we will be doing. I'm not terribly clear why we're not able to produce some sort of data suggesting we've done what we have done. But in terms of an overarching framework, I think that's beneficial. It's sideways from what I'm asking though. It's not, it's not
Okay.
really connected.
Okay, thank you for that follow-up, but so the internal audit, so that's under 1.4, which is what we spoke to earlier. So again, a framework is a
that's-
plan, an audit is something that's measurable. Go ahead.
That's a little bit different. Oh,
I think, so as terms of 1.4, I think as an audit for that is an audit of the processes. However, what Board Member Huft is mentioning is an audit of those, yeah, and like,
how it's
it
affecting
is
the
kind of an
actual-
audit of the processes, but it's for a different intent. It's to look for, are things equitable?
I mean,
I think I captured. Okay, great. In that case,
So then I guess we'll leave it to you then to work out some more specifics of how that can be developed into a achievable and measurable objective for this plan. Okay, we'll leave that to you guys.
Okay.
then.
oh, all right. And then, okay, so if we're good with this goal area, in that case, we can move on to public comment for this section and then a break.
okay. And then lunch break, yeah.
Okay, and we'll look for public comment in the room first before we go online. Do we have any? I know we have mostly staff here,
Yeah,
so
no.
seeing no in-house audience members wishing to comment, moderator, would you open up online comments for this particular goal?
Absolutely. WebEx, now is the time for people to raise their hands to make a public comment. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. So I think we'll be looking for a lunch break now. Steve, how long?
We have to go for an hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's say we'll be back at 1:45, just round it up a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay.
That
All right,
works.
we'll be back at 1:45.